I might ask you to just introduce yourself.
Sure, I'm Isabella Higgins. I'm the social affairs reporter for ABC News, and I worked for many years as the Europe correspondent and reported in places all over the world, the war in Ukraine, the war in Israel, Gaza, and also the US.
They've woken up from another difficult night and now they face day 4 of this invasion.
I was in Ukraine in 2022 when the war with Russia started. I arrived about 2 days before it happened, and I was watching people prepare, people who were hoping that this wasn't going to happen. And then I was in the country when those very first air raid alarms went off at about 5 a.m. in the morning. There were tanks and troops rolling in across the border, Russian soldiers. Immediately there were attacks on buildings, schools, government departments, and you could immediately feel the energy in the country change. It was a really frantic energy, lots of people who were trying to flee that country, just really worried for their life. We turned on our camera, we started talking to people, we were listening to what was happening, we were trying to watch the local news, and we started reporting on this war and what we were seeing. We were trying to explain to people in Australia what it felt like to wake up and feel your country fall into war. A safety that you had always taken for granted was now gone. The country that you believed in, that you'd grown up in, was now under threat.
What was it like? Because obviously, it's a very dangerous job.
We were nervous for our own safety. We didn't know what that war was going to look like. We're thinking, what do we need to wear when we're walking around the streets? Do we need to have big, heavy flak jackets on? Do we need to have helmets on? How much should we even be going outside?
From here, Ukraine has just launched a strike and they're monitoring now.
You wonder what's going to happen next. You wonder if the next loud bang is going to be even closer, or what might happen with that next loud bang. Are you going to be lucky enough to make it down to the bomb shelter? You almost plan every single minute of your day to make sure that you're being as safe as possible. Now, you can do all the right things and you can wear all the right protective gear. You can make the perfect movement plan. You can make sure that you're traveling with a military escort or a security guard, but you might still be unlucky, or suddenly a road you were planning on using is struck by a missile, or suddenly drones are somewhere where you wanted to travel, and you've got to be prepared to just throw that plan out the window.
Medic, find a medic.
7 people who lived in this apartment building are now dead after another Russian airstrike.
You realise you are putting your own safety and your own life on the line for this job.
Did you ever feel targeted here?
It is recognised in international law that journalism is not a crime, and journalists who are reporting on the worst atrocities around the world are protected. Any military force is not meant to attack journalists, and doing so is actually a war crime.
The tools of a journalist who'd just been killed in an Israeli strike on Nasser Hospital.
So as a journalist, there is some legal protection for you, but in the heat of war, in the heat of conflict, that isn't always respected. And we do know that in some places around the world, journalists are targeted because certain regimes don't want the stories of those places getting out. So while we should be protected, not all journalists are.
Do you know anything about that? What can you report at this stage? All right. Yumna, please take cover. If you are in a position to do so safely, you can explain to us what we're happening. If you are not in a position to do so safely, then please get to safety.
I think this all comes back to, why your role as a journalist in these places is so important.
Obviously today we live in a world where there's so much video, there's so many photos online that we almost don't know what to believe. And journalists are sent to these places to help people around the world understand what they're seeing. And they try and give the words, the feelings, the scent, the emotion to those pictures or that vision you might be seeing. And while we often hear that a picture can tell 1,000 words, sometimes you need to hear the stories behind those pictures, behind that vision, for it to really make sense.
The scale of damage in this city is almost unbelievable. Everywhere you look, look, buildings have some sort of damage.
Journalists, when we're on the ground, we can say it is so bitterly cold that I can barely feel my fingers, and I can see every soldier's nose is bright red. Every soldier who's here is at risk just from the cold. And you can explain things that maybe those pictures can't.
Just near me, we can see there are thousands of army tanks.
It's been 3.5 years since the full-scale invasion, so these men are tired.
Being a journalist is a great privilege because you get to see so many different corners of the world with your own eyes. And as a journalist, you're given the responsibility sometimes to write the first draft of history. You see something before the rest of the world does. And it's a really important job because without information, without context, we can't understand what's happening around us. So as journalists, we're extremely lucky that we get to inspire and inform the rest of the world.